I really like the title of this talk, The Hardest Paddock, the one between the ears. So the temptation with this one, of course, is to go into a long and sad story about the rates of suicide amongst farmers and all that sort of thing, but we're not really going to go down that territory today. We don't need to. I think everyone knows about that. And anyway, this is a grouping of people who are interested in how we go forward and how we tell stories of resilience and how we find ways to conquer the challenges. So that's really what we hope to focus on today. So we have Chris Eggert, and the bios are available for you guys to read about their specific families. Chris is a leading New South Wales regenerative farmer and educator from way before the term regenerative was being used and bandied around. And he's also a really compelling example of a fourth generation farmer who's doing things differently. And he's also helping the fifth generation, his son Jimmy, who's recently established his own Jersey milk business, which is really fabulous and exciting. And for 10 years, we've been buying Chris and Anne's pork and eggs, and I can vouch for the quality of the produce that comes out of the farming practices that these guys implement. It's fantastic, and our customers absolutely love it. And Jimmy's milk is the same. We also stock that. Jim Phillipson comes from a farming background in Victoria and spent 40 years building a highly successful business in the corporate sector. And then in 2018, he did something truly radical, and that is he put all accumulated business profits into a thing called the Rendia Trust, which he'll tell us about. But it's basically a vehicle which is intended to drive conservation outcomes, beneficial outcomes. And Jim says, why would you invest in anything else? We've only got one Earth. Our most critical investment is the planet we depend on. I think we'd all agree with that. So please welcome our speakers. Okay, so I think we should start with you both telling us a little bit about your stories and what you've done and how you arrived at the place where you departed from, you know, where you took the road less travelled, and then we can start exploring the impacts of those decisions and how you've coped with the challenges and so on. So Jim, would you like to start?
Thanks, Laura. And being in the people tent this morning, the people tent is actually the place to be, so thank you. But I'd normally have a dozen stories for the particular topic, but this one's pretty close to home, so I've actually written Heather and my story, and that can be a segue to any which way we go from here on in. So born in I'll head this up: profit, purpose, partnership, pathways and life. And Angela grabbed it with profit, people and planet. So we've really focused, or we've pivoted to the people and planet, the other two Ps. There's been a lot of conversations around the first P, but I think the matrix of the community is part of the solution, rather than each person having to do all three Ps as a community. We can do the combined three Ps together. Born in 1953 on Monero country, Bombala River. Heather, born in 1955 on Gunno-Kurno country on Avon River. We're part of the largest Homo sapien breeding event following the World War to end all wars, World War II. Little did we know we were just starting World War, or Worldwide War 3, the war against nature. So we've been waging that war for 80 years. Our family has worked in the bush in the Eden Monero Gippsland country since 1850. Heather's family forebears walked from the South Australia tin mines to dairy farm around the Avon River near Stratford in Gippsland. After an idyllic 20 years growing up on farms and in the farming community and having no farm to inherit, we roamed the world before buying an overgrazed hill farm in 1984. Our own breeding event soon followed. And using the best agricultural practices, we intensified the grazing, fencing, water points, and fortunately fencing out the gullies and creeks for regeneration. 10 years later, we had our comparison. Exciting and living nature along the riparian zones. Cricket pitch soil in the grazing zones. We spent the next decade extending the nature zones until our kids and last cattle left the farm. Soon after, a neighbouring bush property was purchased and Eco-Gips was born. As old farmers in the district moved on, it's code for died, more properties were purchased. Now all these properties are forming a stepping stone for nature and people from the plains to the Alps. Our McAllister River floodplain is now intensively farmed by dairy and vegetables. As the wetlands are steadily graded in, and our properties are becoming an island of biodiversity, providing ecosystem services for all local ag and nurture for the community. Eco-Gips holds the highest stocking rates for biodiversity in the district. Heather is also mother of the world's most threatened tree, the Avon River peppermint. Thought to be extinct, but recently found at one small area on the Avon River. This season, she tripled the population with new babies. Similarly, wrinkleworts, a daisy species once widespread on the grassy plains, virtually extinct in the wild, is flourishing on 3 Eco-Gips properties. Where to now? We realised a future owner of these properties could reverse all this with one day on a bulldozer. So, researching the options, we found no secure way to protect from this. So in 2021, we helped found a not-for-profit called Biodiversity Legacy Limited, a charity with the purpose to do exactly that, and quickly found landowners around Australia who resonated and have joined the BDL journey. Today, BDL employs a team of mostly young people to support everyone's journey. And each one is different, but all moving to secured ownership and in time stewarded by local young people. We're privileged and proud to support this initiative. We've also found very, very recently that there's more and more ag families reaching out, how to keep the family farm in the farm. So that's the end of my intro. I'll pass on to Chris.
Thanks, Jim. Ooh, righto. So I'm been an organic dairy farmer for 25 years now. Previous to that, I was on a very conventional dairy farm. We also did turf, grew like Kaikui turf or acne grass, as my man called it. So we learned how to work when we were pretty young, did little square bars of hay and that sort of thing. There's 3 brothers, the grandfather and my cousins. I'm the only one that sort of had an interest in farming. Got to try not to get emotional here. Anyway, there was innovation, I suppose, on the farm. We had this thing called the Big Bull on it when I was a kid. It was a big fiberglass Frisian cow, and it was like a tourist attraction. And like, unfortunately, like it fell over. Well, we pushed it over after a while. The business, my uncle did an amazing job, but I like look back and think that'd have been amazing now, like the way we farm, to be able to incorporate that sort of thing. Anyway, so I did school. I went to uni. I did rural science in Armidale, and that's when I first met the great Charlie Arnott. He was, if you know him, he's doing the same thing. Went back to the farm. Missed the farm. I started doing natural resources, so I was a bit green early. There's something about it I sort of liked and that. And then a lecturer said, like, you got to go bird watching this weekend, and I wanted to play footy, and that. So I said, I might go and I think I missed a farm, so I want to go back. And I did rural science. It was easy to get lifts to uni and stuff like that. There was more people doing it. And anyway, so I went back to the farm after that for the weekend, and I never left. And then, we got more and more conventional. That was in 1996, and by the year 1999, I think, like, we were spending $20,000. We were milking about 200 cows. We spent $20,000 a year at the vet. So you put that in real terms now, and we've put in about $60,000 to $70,000 worth of artificial fertilisers on 200 acres. And like my dad and his brothers are pretty good farmers, like conventional farmers. We're growing big crops of corn. We'd plough the paddocks twice a year. We're growing ryegrass in winter, corn silage in summer, and we're feeding up to 10 kilos of grain. And that's what we knew. Like, that's what we knew. Like, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that at the time. But then, I started, I remember the vet came and he opened this cow up because it just died. Like, the blood was coming out of its nose and that. I'm sure, like, looking back, it must have had nitrate poisoning. And, like, you couldn't tell the difference between its heart and its lung and that. It's had that much lesions and shit all over it, like, inside. So they were giving a lot of milk, but they weren't lasting very long. And anyway, there's some people come up from Sydney to our little farming cooperative we had called Hastings Co-op, and they said, if you go organic, this was in deregulation in 2000, and at that time too, we just bought the family farm off my dad's brothers and his father, so we were in huge debt, and we was going from like 50 cents a litre down to like 28 cents a litre. And this, I thought they were hippies back then. This bloody dudes from Sydney come up and said you could get 75 cents a litre if you're organic. I was like, you're joking, mate. It's if you'd be organic, there's people up in the hills do that. Anyway, sorry, bear with me. And anyway, like, I did the figures on this deregulation thing, and I had a meeting with my mum and dad, and I said, we're going to have to, we'll either have a go at this thing or we're going to go broke anyway. And because we'd bought the farm with so much debt, and I think interest rates are pretty high then too. And I said, we're going to tell the rest of the family, like his brothers and that. Like, we had this meeting, and it was like, shit, it was hard, And said, look, we're in because I was still living on the farm there and that then. And I said, well, if this doesn't work, we're going to sell part of the farm, and we're just going to keep another part, because it's in 4 or 5 separate blocks. Remember, I'm 4th generation, so like the farms have been accumulated over the years. And anyway, we did the organic thing, so we put all our potassium nitrate, potassium chloride and urea and that out on like the 31st of June or 30th of June, and the next day we're organic. That we got. No, that we started doing. We went into what they call the pre-conversion. I think we were organic farmers. I got up out of bed, and I'm a hippie. But so that, and those, like, I got to tell you, like, because we're talking about mental health and that sort of thing. Those first 3 or 4 years, like, when I look back, like, holy dooly, like, it was like, because like, we're a high production farm. My grandfather was like the president of the New South Wales Dairy Farmers Association. And his son has had this nutcase son. It's going to turn this farm organic. So this was in 2000. Yeah, so that's when we started. And so I been doing rural science and thinking I was like a bit of an agriculturalist and that. I did like this, just like the paddock between the ears thing. I thought, I'll just buy chook manure. And I'll just use this much nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus and all that, like do the math, because farming's maths, isn't it? Like, this amount of nutrients out, this amount of nutrients in. That's what we're taught. So, yeah, we'll do that. And then the bloody certifying body, whatever, said you've got to compost it. So it's got to be wet first, and you've got to compost it, and you put this bloody red stuff I got from Japan or somewhere in there and some microbes, and away we go. And mate, the smell was just like unbelievable. So this is digressing a bit, but at the same time, because I thought this is bloody hairy, I did a diploma in, is it DipEd? Yeah, like when you're a teacher. So I became a teacher as well. So I was teaching in a high school, the local high school, like casual teaching, trying to make just a bit of income for my young family and that sort of thing. And like I'd be teaching, there'd be kids hanging out of the classroom when the boys were spreading the compost on the farm, like dry reaching and that. And there'd be people walking down the street in town because we're just across the river with hankies over their noses. And so I was feeling pretty crap about myself and what we're doing. And the council, of course, rang up. They were really supportive. Like you're going to, you got this bloody environmental thing going on there. Well, I'm organic. I don't even spray and I'm in trouble. Like, oh, no, you're causing bloody smell pollution or something. So then I started, my wife was actually working with land care, so she was like a bit greener than me, which was good. And then she said there's this course thing called holistic management. And like that's when I did that. And that's when like I started thinking differently. And the actual course was like, it was good in that. It wasn't until we went to this bloke's farm at Wingham, which is like an hour's drive from us, and it was like dry, like there was no grass anywhere. And we went to this dude's farm who was doing holistic management. And I was like, how good's this? He had all this grass and he was happy. And his cows, he was moving them, his beef cows, and he had the little licks and all that, and a portable water trough. And I went, wow, this can work. So then I went back home and just started doing that. And we're in a drought and we had like these paddocks of ryegrass that were ready to graze, remember? And that's when like Dad just went nuts at me. Like, I can't believe how hard it must have been for him. Like he was my age that I am now. When he said, righto, you can, I was like 26 or 27 or something like that, you can do this. I'll support you or whatever, but it just got too much in the end. Because he said, we've got to put the cows in that paddock, they're giving no milk and it's just going to the shit sort of thing. And I said, we're not putting them in there. We're going to let that paddock grow. We've got to let it grow. We've got to let the roots get down and we've got to let it, like this nature thing, sort itself out a bit. So we had a pretty big barney. I still remember it, like we're feeding out hay off the back of the truck and we're buying this organic hay, like you wouldn't feed it to your dog, feeding it. Like, it was hard, like it was really hard, and people like belittling you, like, the sale yards, and you'd still go to like farm days, like dairy farm days where we start discussing about cows and grass and all that, and in the end it was just a decision, like just move away from that culture, just don't go to it, and just come home, read the holistic stuff, talk to these other farmers that have been doing it for a while, and go from there. So from there on, sorry, I'm rambling heaps. We went through the, but at the moment, positive, like I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. Like I feel absolutely amazing. So, and like our farm's like just incredible, and my family and everything's amazing, and yeah, I was just really lucky. A bit teary. We go back and look, it just feels so good, like to be able to produce great food for people. You know what I mean? And you don't need chemical fertilisers. You don't need Roundup, and you don't need pesticides. Like it's probably taken me 15 years to be able to like come out and just say it. Like you can grow amazing pastures and amazing crops. And I'm probably speaking to converted here mostly anyway, you know that, without that stuff. But then after that, like I went to this Elaine Ingham thing, this is after I did holistic management, and she said, there's this 5-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio thing going on with microbes. I was like, yeah, that's really interesting in that. And then I thought, I'm buying this chook manure, and I've got like 200 cows standing on concrete every day, and we're hosing it off into this effluent pit that was best practice, had a dam and all that. Like it's a whole industry in the dairy industry, like hosing the yard off and separating the shit, and there's shit suckers and spreaders and bloody emulsifiers and all this. Like, you go to a magazine in the dairy, like, and it's everywhere, that stuff. So we just like because we're letting our grass grow longer then, like in summer when it got a bit old or whatever, like we cut it and bale it and put it on the yards. So it took away all the water. Like, we're using no water in the dairy, with just a little bit next to the herringbone to wash off. All the urine is being absorbed by the carbon, and the manure's been like kept too. Like, so we just cleaned it out with a tractor every 3 or 4 days. Like, when we first started, like, we're using a shovel to get every little bit and all that. Now we just, like, if there's a bit there, we don't like, it doesn't matter too much. And then we're composting it, and it was going really good. And like, I had a microscope, and I was looking at a microscope, you know, and there's a bloody amoeba and all that sort of stuff. And like, and I was getting, we have to do all this stuff with it and turn it every 3 days. Like, I was just living in this compost paddock. And we bought a big turner and all that a bit later on. Now we turn it like when we can. Like, it just like does itself, you know what I mean? But anyway, so we went through all that, and then we like changed the herd to jerseys, and this, I'm going pretty quick now, over the last years, and we got chickens, so we had like organic chickens as well now, and we milk once a day at the moment, and we've got like a farm fridge type thing, a little farm shop with 3 freezers, and that's full of chicken and pork and beef and chicken, pork, beef, yeah, that's all. And we've got our egg shed as well, so there's always plenty to eat. We love our protein at home. The kids will, used to come home from school and that, and go out and grab a couple of Scotchies and whip them up in the frying pan. And my wife would get upset. That's $50 worth of Scotch fillet. I could have sold that and all that. But anyway, so I just like as far as like the mental part of it goes, and that, like, being on the farm now and some of the stuff I see, it just makes me feel so good. Like, when I'm standing in a paddock of grass and, heard a bit of Dan's talk before where he said, like, you put your hand in the soil and that. Like, I'm doing that on, like, in our pastures, like, down, like, digging it out. I used to look at my grandfather's garden and think, geez, it'd be good if our whole farm was like that. And it's starting to become like that. So we're feeding the farm with compost. We're doing lots of multi-species cropping now, loving that, using biocast on the seed. It's a big thing. And, we're just onwards and upwards, I suppose. And then now my son Jimmy started his micro dairy business, and that's going really good. We're going to talk about that later on at 4:00. And my youngest son Billy, he made year 8 at school. School wasn't for him, so we ripped him out of there, and he's been working on the farm, and he's got a job with a local irrigation mob, and he's loving it. Like, he's on the excavator and all that sort of thing. And yesterday he just bought his first 10 sheep. He's going to call his little business Bill's Lambs, he says. So, which is a change. For 6 months ago he wanted to get a new Land Cruiser with all the gear on it, but now he's like thinking he might just get an old Hilux. And I've got Tritons, but he reckons he's not going to drive one of those heaps of shit. But anyway. So that's where we're at the moment. My oldest son is 22, and he would make a great farmer, but he's like a musician. I heard him play when he was in year 11 during COVID. He played his Hey Jude song on the saxophone, and I cried for an hour. I was gobsmacked, and I said to him, if you can make people feel like that, you better give we should be trying to get the kids back, but I said, you better give the music a crack first. So that's where we're at. Oh, the other thing is too, like, my mum and dad are still on the farm. They're still involved. I heard stuff about when you pass the farm on and that sort of thing. I think, like, succession planning, it's been like a bit difficult, but I'm thinking that's really important, like, to keep the older generation involved. Like, we tend to say, the kids are going to take over now and mum and dad are going to go on holidays or whatever. I think they're starting to realise that being on the farm is such a great place. We have I have one employee. He's been with us for the whole journey. He's been working with me since he was 14 years old. He's now 33, and he's got his own family. My kids adore him. I can look up to him. So my 15-year-old's working with him while I'm away. And we just got some other new employees. And, like, because we talk about mental health and what makes you feel good, I guess one of the employees had been there for 2 weeks, said the other day, I can't believe all the people that work on your farm are so happy. And they're so nice. And I thought, that's pretty cool. Sorry, that's it.
Well, we could probably just leave it there, don't you reckon? That was pretty good. That was fantastic. What a beautiful story. And, you know, it's interesting in the years that we've been doing what we do, which is working with farms like Oxhill and others. I've heard stories of farmers who've been through, they've had these epiphanies and then they go through this transition process, and it's extraordinarily difficult socially. They experience a lot of pushback from the local communities, often a lot of pushback from family, very similar to the story you've told. But it seems that everybody comes out at a certain point at this place of extraordinary joy, you know, and the Haggertys were talking about it before. It's when you put in and you get back in this holistic process, it just creates this sort of, these cycles of joy, which include joy in the diversity and the product of the ecosystem, but also human community joy. And it's an extraordinary thing to hear and to see. So is your father and your family and actually your peers in your local community, what do they think about what you do now?
I haven't, I probably haven't like in the local community, like I don't, jump up and down and say I'm organic and all that sort of stuff. Is it Jim Roebuck was talking last night about that, like just sort of leading by example a little bit, I suppose. But then Ian said you're a bit weak if you do that before. So I was, ouch. Well, we do field days and that sort of thing. But like you'll never get like conventional farmers come. And so like all that sort of like pushback and that, I just had to it's just like if you're feeling bad or whatever, you just got to get into a different area. Like you got to move, like just get out of it, I think. And like some of my mates now even like come and buy the meat and that, like, they're not too like worried about the environment and all that sort of stuff, but they want good food, and they're starting to get it as they get older, that we need to eat good food and we need to exercise and all that sort of thing. I don't know if I should tell a story about raw milk a bit, maybe not. Well, this why I built this little milk factory for Jimmy. We'll talk about it more later, but in 2015, I think, a lady came to the door and put a little badge up, said Food Authority. I said, I know who you are. And she said, you've been selling raw milk. And I said, oh, how do you know that? I haven't been selling nothing. We better go inside and have a cup of tea. And so what happened was those people, it was just family and friends just getting a bit of raw milk, you know what I mean? And we just put it in the fridge at home. They'd bring their bottles. If they weren't clean, I didn't fill them up. They'd leave a carton of beer or toilet paper or some cheese or whatever. They'd leave something, so I wasn't selling it. And but a bloke was sold it in a cafe in Port Macquarie, which is our local sort of bigger regional centre. And then, a lady went in there and said, moved up from Melbourne and my kid's got eczema and I heard raw milk's really good. Have you got any? And he's like, yeah, we got some. Busted. So I was just I thought my heart, he rang me, which was good of him. I thought my heart was going to come out of my chest. I thought like the bloody federal police are going to come around and everything. I was like full panic. And so I said to her, well, it's not us we're not trying to sell it or we're not advertising it. It's people coming to us. They want it. How can that be a crime? And then I said to her, look, I'll do it properly. I'll build a small factory, because I wasn't happy with what my milk process is doing with my milk, because they're homogenising it and they're heating the guts out of it and they're just treating it like a commodity, and I don't like that. So that's why I wanted to build my own milk factory, but I never got I just didn't get my finger out and start it. Like, it was built over a 5-year period. It's only small, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so was that the raw milk story? So that was, yeah. I sort of, yeah. We had to stop that. But what I was going to say about it is, people were bringing their kids over to get it in the afternoons after school, and they were out playing footy with my kids. They're swimming in the pool. They're playing cricket. We were chatting to these new people, and like I was forming community. You know what I mean? And those people, they were pissed off. Like when we had to stop, they were devastated. But for me, it was like a weight off my shoulders. Like it was getting too much. It was getting out of control. People leaving messages on the phone and sending us emails and like, whoa, who are you? You know? So, that was stressful. Yep.
There's a big demand for raw food that we can't. I'm just conscious of time. I think one of the things, I guess, that we touch on, we didn't actually get the point in your story, Jim, of where you had your road to Damascus moment because presumably you came from a conventional model, but you chose to farm differently at some point. So presumably you had your moment like so many farmers do. Is that what happened to you? Or
I guess I haven't had the pressure that Chris has been under and our family, so that's a benefit. But certainly within our community, our farming community has been hollowed out. There's some good people here from Gippsland, and they'll understand that. And particularly latterly, major vegetable industrial farming is taking over the dairy farming, so that the last bastion of sort of family farming in the McAllister Valley is threatened. So yeah, it was a whole series of Damascuses, but also in a parallel world, I was working with a lot of farming community and farmers, so seeing this on almost a daily basis. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think a lot of us who are involved in these kinds of conversations come up against is the rigidity in farmer thinking. I mean, we all hate change. We all find change incredibly difficult, but farmers do seem to find that really hard. And we know that we're speaking to the converted in this forum, but increasingly what we want is to be speaking to people who are open or considering making the change. So I guess I'm interested to know, how you think we can make those kinds of changes and promote a more open way of thinking. You had a lovely phrase when we had our previous conversation. You said between the ears and behind the fence, and I just thought that was a really lovely way of sort of articulating that closed idea. I do my thing, I'm behind my fence, this is my land, I do what I like, I don't have a responsibility. I'm interested to know, because I think you're really tackling some of that stuff. Because it leads to a lot of bad outcomes.
Yes, a lot of this is we're operating in the wrong structure. So we've got a structural deficit. Now that doesn't mean we can't work within that. And I think people in this room are probably divided between those that are the survivors of the system and those that have seen it coming and sidestepped and converted. But it was really interesting listening to Jake this morning. No prior knowledge. So a significant adaptation pre-advantage. But one of our major structural challenges is this land ownership, and that is now becoming a very, very expensive business for any young person to come into farming. When you multiply by families' succession planning, multi-generations, Chris's parents and maybe even your grandparents, and next gen, it gets really, really messy. So put those two together, and what we're working on is changing that paradigm with working through the process with families, and then being able to move that title into a safer zone, so it protects the integrity of that farming unit because scale is really important, but allows the initiative of the Jakes of the world, the Jake character, the more entrepreneurial, so that we're not shackled with a prior generation, this is how you do it because I own the farm, I happen to be 80 years old, but so be it. And it really frees up the system. So in any other business context, you wouldn't be imprisoning the entrepreneurs within that capital structure. So yes, we're part of our support coming through the philanthropy work that we do is actually funding those organisations that will work with both generations, the 80-year-olds and the 25-year-olds. And it's interesting that one of the big demographic changes that we probably don't take too much notice of, but a generation or two ago, 80% of the population of the world was engaged directly in farming. Today, it would be less than 8%. So as soon as you put that division within community, then that's where we get in the dissonance, where we blame the consumer for not recognising good food, the consumer blames the farmer for all the production and pricing issues, and so starting to bring that back through next gen is a real opportunity.
That's right. I think that idea also of how you actually encourage people to take the brave steps. I mean, the two of you faced with an opportunity and with a challenge, rose to the occasion and have approached it and with really lateral solutions. I guess what's interesting is why don't more people do that? I mean, why don't more people like your peers, for example, Chris, why do you think others don't do that? Why do they persevere and just keep kind of dragging themselves through that system when there are so many wonderful opportunities to do things differently?
Ego, probably. I see a lot of it like in farming and that, and I had to let all that go. I think it's taught me to be really like humble with stuff. But with other people, I'm not too sure. Like I've had farmers like wives come and talk to me. What's once a day milking like? Oh, yeah, it's so good. You know what I mean? But if they got young kids or whatever and that sort of thing, like it's like the only thing, I didn't do it years ago. I should have done it years ago. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like that way of farming. Like it's just so embedded in people, and it's still taught in the school and in the universities and that. So, but like there's obviously a lot more people there here now than there would have been in 2000. So I think, yeah, we just got to keep just chipping away or bashing away, as I'd say to the kids. Just keep bashing away at it and it'll be all right. So, yeah, I'm not really sure, Laura. I think there has to be something happen to them, like something major. Like if they're cruising along all right and, they're making enough money and they're happy, well, why would they change, I guess?
So do you have any suggestions for how to get through times when they're tough? Like, your responses to the tough times was, to sort of be lateral and think differently. Do you have any other suggestions for what happens when things get really difficult? That's a hard question.
Keep bashing away, keep drinking more beers. No, you shouldn't do that. But I think I was I think you need to sort of try and get off the farm and do something. I think that helps. And get around positive people. The last probably 5 or 6 years I've started doing CrossFit in the afternoons. It's embarrassing, but I really enjoy it. There's a really good positive bunch of people there, and there's no negative talk. Like that's one of the trainers there, and that just don't talk negatively. And like it's a safe place. You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to be sporty or anything like that. You just got to move, and everyone respects each other. And it's just a good vibe of place. My wife does it too now. My kids do it. And it's a break from the farm and going home. If I don't go there, I'll either keep working, or if I go home at 4 o'clock, I'm looking around going, I should mow the lawn. I'll have a stubby instead. You know what I mean? Like, you're better off like going there and doing something first. And quite often, like even now, like I found, like I'll come home because the kids are sort of they're growing up now and that sort of thing. They're not at home. And Anne's busy doing her thing with work and that too. Like I can go back to the farm and just enjoy the sun going down and, you know, cruise around the chooks or go down the paddock and have a wee on the paddock and see how the infiltration's looking. So that's how I deal with that sort of stuff too. Yeah, I think you just got to I reckon you just, like for me, I just dug in and just worked our way out of it. Like no one's especially like the dairy's so good with that for that. Even though it's hard, like who's going to milk the cows for you? Mate, you got to get up. No one else is going to do it. And like I put myself in that position as well. Like I made that decision to do that, and that rests on my shoulders, I suppose. I appreciate the support and that sort of thing, but you just got to do it. And if you're thinking about if you're here and you're thinking about being regenerative and that, just go home and do it. And that's what I said to someone when I was doing a holistic management course. I said to this lady called Judy Earle, I said, do you reckon I should start doing this sort of stuff in summer or spring? She said, go home and start tomorrow. That's when you start.
Yeah. So there you have it. CrossFit, weeing on the paddocks, and just start tomorrow. I think that's the mantra. Well, thank you very much, Jim and Chris. Now, if anybody has questions, please go ahead and ask them and we'll answer. No questions? No questions about wee or CrossFit? That's a good question. Chris, I'll just repeat the question. So the question is, what is the role of vets in identifying the issues that are coming out of conventional or intensive farming, and how can they help to convert more farmers to regen?
Well, I don't spend anything at the vet anymore, so they're not going to be real. I've taken vet students on the farm for 30 years from Sydney University, doing their placements, and they got no idea about soil health or plant health or anything like that. They got no idea that what you eat or what a cat eats or a dog eats affects their health. It's the same in the medical industry, and that's an industry as well. So, yeah, I don't think they have a role to play. That'd be great. There probably is holistic vets. I'm not. I don't want to tar them all the same brush, but I don't even know their phone number. I couldn't even ask him.
Oh.
I guess I'm buying minerals and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Next question.
The transition to once a day milking, that must have been a really big decision.
This is a question about the transition to once a day milking and how you made that decision.
Oh yeah, no one else was doing it around our area, that's for sure. But because I was already mad, it didn't matter. Like, but actually, we tried doing it in 2007, and we had a predominantly Frisian herd then, like a stud herd still, and we did it for about 2 weeks, and it was just too much for me, Dad. It was too much, so it changed back. Well, it was like we had a mastitis and a drop in production and that sort of thing. And I don't like, although the farm was going all right then, I don't think we had the knowledge, and like the building blocks for the farm wasn't there. Like, I think it takes a while, like, to get that soil, like that fungus and that pumping in your soil, where, like, the fungus and that's working in your soil where I heard this the other week, where, it can actually choose, the fungus can choose what nutrients it's taken up for the plants, like the plants and the fungus are communicating and that sort of thing. I know that's got to do with once a day milking, but yeah, I think now we've like a Jersey herd now, and we're not chasing like big production. A lot's been talked about money and all that sort of stuff. I wouldn't even know how much money I got in the bank. No idea. My wife will tell me when it's no good. I suppose it's just like, it's all about like just creating this like really good landscape with what I've got, the best we can do with what we've got at the time. And you go through all the phases of the kids are little and they grow up and you got more time or less time and all that sort of thing. So yeah, but the once a day milking, like I got solar panels put on a shed, and so it means like I can milk the cows, chill the milk down, and run the hot water system that on the solar pretty much. Like, it's a 60 kilowatt system, so I think it's doing pretty good. But that's that's only because bloody power got too dear. That's why I've done it. I had no trouble using the power, but it got too dear. They had to put the solar on. I didn't want to spend that money on that infrastructure. But in the end, and that's what's happening. I've been forced to do it.
I just wanted to also say that Jim is doing a session tomorrow on succession where he'll talk more about the model he was talking about, which is a really, really interesting model. And when we talk about overcoming, the challenges and the changes in the sort of approach to farming, I think, one way is the way Chris has done it, which is to actually, in a sort of conventional family relationship, to take everything down a different path. And you've chosen a different way, which is about seeding the capacity for change amongst a whole lot of people in different communities. Very, very interesting. Sorry, Emma Kate, you had a question.
I'm going to ask Jim, you mentioned that the small family dairy farms were moving out pretty quickly and were being taken over by big corporate vegetable farmers. Why is that? Because there's not much money in veggies these days either. So can you explain the transition there in terms of the different sectors?
Why is the Gippsland farming community, the dairy farmers, all being replaced by vegetable growers? What's the logic there?
Yeah, it's certainly not all. But yes, at the talk last night, James said that most Midwest farms in the US are actually run into loss, but they look like they're a going concern, and part of that is capital. So the vegetable dairy equation is that the vegetable farmers are coming from peri-urban areas, so they're bringing an enormous capital gain. And the closest reliable, watered, civilised area is typically dairy farming areas. Then you look at the failure of succession planning, where those dairy farmers have worked till they've dropped, had enough, put the sign up, sell it next week. So that's there's multiple factors there, all of which can be managed if you work with a planned approach. But yeah, the economics, cash flow is often more important than profit, and the cash flow cycle of small salad veggies, you've virtually got your money back before you've spent it. So again, you've got a number of factors, and then intensification, where you can take 4 or 5 dairy farms, each viable farm in their own right, and put that in one unit.
Yes.
As someone who's definitely never advocated for raw milk, I've definitely never sold any, I'd love to know how that ended up with the Food Authority. Was it a tap on the wrist, or did they come down with a fine or a ruling?
So the question is, what was the end result of your investigation into selling raw milk from the Food Authority?
Nothing. Well, first of all, she threatened me with fine, and then she said I'd definitely be like at that time there was that name and shame thing. Talk about like mental health for farmers, like what, you know what I mean, like getting kicked. Like, and anyway, I said, well, if that happens, well, I'll be on the media. There'll be media, and I will speak. It'll be. I said to my wife, well, we've got nothing to lose, like I'll advocate for it. And like, there's been talk about, like, it's a good point. Like, I don't know if any of you've thought about this. Like, it really hit home when Jimmy started processing his milk to me. Like, we talk about climate and all that sort of thing, but the amount of waste in the dairy industry from processing and energy is just, like, you think about it. We got to chill that milk to 4 degrees in our vats from 38 degrees. Within 2 or 3 hours, I think it is, of the finish of milking, might be 2 hours. And then the milk tanker comes and picks it up and drives. He might go to another 5, 10 farms, depending how big the farms are. Then they take it to the processing facility. And then they heat it back up again to 70 or 80 degrees. Then they spin the shit out of it, or homogenise it or whatever, and take the fat out and protein and that, and then put it back. And they're pumping it all over the place too. They got to wash all that stuff with hot water. They got to use chemical acids, chlorines, whatever, alkalis, and then they got to cool it all back down again to 4 degrees. Then they put it in refrigerated trucks and take it to the shops. How much energy is that using? Like, I'm not a scientist or a mathematician or anything, but that's a shitload of energy. So you're safe. So you're nice and safe. You're not going to die if you drink raw milk. But you can drink low-fat milk, and you'll be fine. It's good for you.
Yes, and there's nothing left in that milk by the time you get it into that thing. Yeah, it's good for you. Have we got any other questions? One more. Oh, 2. Okay. Probably just enough time. Yep, we've got time.
Before his talk, before he does, Chris, I wonder whether you might share, you mentioned Jimmy's business and Bill's lambs, your approach to having them kind of come into the farming business and how you've helped them, or what you've said to them in terms of how their environment looks.
So what's Chris's advice to his 2 sons who are coming into the farm?
I think you meant like how like when they were kids, like how do we like introduce them to the farm and their role within the farm? Yeah. Well, the eggs has never been a greatly profitable thing, but it's been a thing where like the kids could go and collect eggs in a safe environment. We got rid of the Marama dogs and all that sort of thing, and they could go and collect the eggs, so they could do meaningful work on the farm without I suppose, injury and that sort of thing. I'd never made them work on the farm. Like, encouraged them, and I probably, what's the word? Like I said, how proud of them I am and that sort of stuff when they do something, and I tried not to get up them when they did something wrong or they didn't show up or whatever like that, you know what I mean? Like, I tried not to, and we tried really hard. And we also tried with the kids and not to whinge about it. Because when I was a kid, the farm was a shit place where you worked really hard and everything went wrong and everyone fought and all that. When it was, you know what I mean? I hope that's not been disrespectful to my parents and uncles and that sort of thing. I love them all dearly, But I want them to think it was a cool place to be, and it's all right to make mistakes, and it's all right to fuck things up and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? But Jimmy, I think Jimmy, he's 20 years old. And he won't mind me saying this. How many times have you driven a tractor, Jimmy? Well, he's never driven a tractor, but he's a cracking farmer though.